So we've been looking at how to build out our web page. We've looked at things like our head tag and then our body tag. We've looked at adding things like headings and paragraph tags, and then we said we could have a page header. Well, we can also have a page footer. Now, the footer is typically at the bottom of the page, and so a lot of times it gets overlooked, but a lot of times we have to have some very important information there. So this is where we're going to put things like our copyright notice and other legal notices. Nowadays, with a lot of rules, especially coming out of the EU, we have to have things like GDPR recognition and some other things like that. We also might have things that need to be in a regular place that people can find but don't need to be real prominent, such as contact information. So let's put a couple of things together inside of our footer. So I'm going to come to the bottom of my HTML page, and I'm going to specify footer. It has both an opening and closing tag. Now, by default, the footer is not going to actually display anything. It's an organizational tag. And so it's very similar to the header in its function as far as that goes. But it's also different tag. That way we can style and implement things differently. Now, one of the things that we're often going to need to do is, like I said, put in legal information and maybe contact information. So I'm going to put in another way to group our information together, and that is I'm going to create a div. And a div is just a really nice and easy way to group things together. And here I'm going to put legal information. So I'll say something like legal info, copyright, and then put a year. Now, I could also put this in paragraph tags if I want to. So I could say something like paragraph, legal info, and then I could have another paragraph tag for GDPR, compliance, information, blah, blah, blah. And we can go on and on down that list. I'll create a second div, and this will maybe be for my contact info. And I'll put something for phone as well as maybe email. So here you can see where I just filled in some real basic information with a phone and an email and a couple different paragraphs. If I save this and go back to my browser, reload, you'll notice now down at the bottom I have legal info and I have my contact info, and that all is fine, but it looks kind of the same as the rest of my text, except for the fact that most of my info is on the left-hand side. Now, later on, I'm going to show you how to create two separate columns with our divs so we can put some information on the left and some on the right. We're not going to worry about that just yet. I do want to style this, though, so it looks a little bit more like a information that we would have inside of a footer. So I'm going to come over here to my editor and go to my CSS style. And I'm going to create a section for my page footer. Remember, the comments are just for us to help us organize our information. Now, I'm going to use the footer tag as a selector, and I'm going to use a font size. Now, one thing I'm going to do that's a little bit different is I'm going to use a proportional font size. In this case, I'm just going to say something like 80%. And 80% is going to make me 80% smaller than whatever my default size would be. If I come here and reload, you're going to notice that, well, wait a second, it didn't change. Why is that? Well, this has to do with our specificity that we talked about earlier. We have up here a paragraph tag, and it sets the font size. Then we have our footer tag, and we say, well, we want it to be 80% of our font size. You might say, well, shouldn't the footer win? Well, the paragraph tag is closer to the actual text. So we need to be a little bit more specific. So I'm going to select footer and then put AP. And so this says if I'm a paragraph tag inside of a footer, I have what's now known as a compound selector. And this compound selector will select only paragraph tags if they're in a footer tag. If I save my style sheet and come back and reload, you'll now notice that my text is much smaller. It's 80% of the default size. So this is a huge benefit for me. And I might go, oh, well, maybe I need to make it only 90% or some other value. Using a percentage allows me to adjust one font size and have it move throughout the whole system. So while I can use things like I showed before, setting a pixel size, having a percentage size does have some benefits, and it's also beneficial if someone needs to go in and readjust their font size by default because maybe they have poor eyesight. So this is one thing that we can do. But let's see some other things that we can do. I do have my footer in my paragraph, but I also want to have a selector for just my footer. So I'm going to type in footer, and I'm going to have a slightly different background color. I'm going to choose beige, and I'm going to put a border across the top. That way I have a separation between my footer and the rest of my content. So I'm going to specify border, and I'm going to choose border dash top. So now I need to specify the style, the color, and the thickness. So my color I'm first going to pick as black. Now I'm going to pick my style, which I'm going to choose to be solid. I have a variety of different styles that we'll look at later, but for now we'll look at solid. And I'm going to choose just 1 pixel. Now when I reload it, you'll notice I have a 1 pixel line here at the bottom, and I have my text. So now I'm in compliance with GDPR, assuming I had links and information about that. I have my contact info, which is something my marketing department would want to have, or if I'm doing something like an online portfolio or resume, I want people to be able to reach me, and so I have that as an option, and I've got it separated those so people know where my page begins and ends, and if they need something in the footer, they can quickly go looking for it. So that's the real basic settings of how to set up a footer in an HTML page.